are double referred, so we definitely want to get these moving in the committee. There's Senator Hickman. We are good to go. We're gonna go ahead and call up 2548. We're gonna start at the bottom end for a second. 2548. It's gonna be the last one in there, and we do have. So, are you corporal? What is your title now, Lott? Lieutenant Colonel Matt Lott, who is now he's handling all of our DPS matters with regard to our trucks, our former MDOT duties are brought in. So we like having him here. This bill is a clarification bill. Last year we passed this bill to make everything consistent between the two statutes. Senator Branning graciously helped us with that. Senator Sparks did as well. The only problem was that there was a little bit of language there that had a little discrepancy in it, where there was an interpretation that said at night, we didn't make it clear that our length restrictions during the day applied at night. So the goal of this bill is to make sure that everybody knows that the length restrictions that we have in place during the day apply at night as well. The good news is you can still put on your low light lighting and your flagging and all that stuff and still run, but you still can't go over the, was it 28 feet off the back of that truck. So you've got a little bit of clarification in there. All it says are nighttime there on line 38. So are there questions about that? Any questions? Do I hear a motion?
I think you got a question.
Yes, sir.
No, I didn't. Oh, okay.
So we've got a motion on the floor of title sufficient to pass. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, so we're going to report that one out. And everybody knows Terry. Terry is our assistant for this committee now. If you've not met Terry, she's over at 407. So be sure and go by there if you have any questions on that one. The next one we're going to go to is going to be 2524. This is coming from Secretary of State's office, and we do have a representative from there, don't we?
Yes, sir.
All right. So this is a fiber supply bill, and I'm going to defer to him. But the first thing we've got, well, never mind. That's a committee sub. 2524 is as written. We don't have a committee sub on this one, but the eventual goal is to allow for longer term fiber supply contracts. Is that not right?
Yes, sir.
So do you want to address this bill from the Secretary of State's office?
Things like my name is Bill Chief. I'm the Assistant Secretary of State for Public Land. And really the bill, this bill has been introduced. It's just trying to get school district to help sell their forest product. And some issues with trying to come up with enough tonnage for a pellet mill. But the way the law they try to sell short term, and what this bill does. Forestry Commission in our office to come up with a school district, what school districts timber for a long period of time. So another tool that they go on.
So my understanding is, and thank you, Mr. Cheney, that the Forestry Commission is still to be consulted. It has to make the recommendation on the entering of this fiber supply contract. Have y'all got any other questions on this? Senator Seymour.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Will this be a reduction in the management costs to the state forestry? And you're gonna be on a private contract?
It's gonna be a reduction in management cost that I'm aware of, because they're still going to have a timber crew. They're still managing the timber. This is just really when it comes time to sell. If there's another market out there, then the commission would sit down with those school districts. But you're still gonna have the 15% set aside. The commission is still gonna submit their receipts like they were, like they do. So I don't see this as an increase or a decrease. It's just another savings.
I'm not following you there. I mean, you can't do it right now.
I don't see this costing any more to do or any less. It's just another way to sell them. The commission is still have to do in pre-sale work.
Right. But as far as prescribed burns, would that be under the contract because they're buying your timber already and it's at their time they're wanting to harvest it? If you burn out of the realm of their spec,
Well, on the school side, there is a management plan. So there might be a change in the management plan to stay updated.
so they'll do that on the local level.
So in the department might say, well, next year, but now we're cutting it, so but that's kind of done anyway. Sales get moved around, so, but I don't see it changing materially. They're still connected, they management plan.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, there's one other question on line 228. You see private, is that truly supposed to be contact or contract?
All right, so do you have a motion on that? That's the proper time to amend it?
I think we can do it technically without.
You can fix the typo. Good. We won't need that motion then. We do have our state forester here, Russell Bozeman. So if you have any additional questions for him, Russell was in the back there. Appreciate you being here. Other than that, Senator Branning.
It's in the same line 228, under this language, it would allow, it seems to be a sale under two different scenarios, either put to bid, which I think is what we're using now, or by way of a private sale upon the advice and recommendation of the Forestry Commission. Would that be a new procedure, or do we already have that option under current law for other forest products?
Bill
Whoever
or
can
Russell,
answer it.
whichever one would like to answer that.
Right now, the only way to sell or is by vote. Now, the issue makes recommendation whether you take that bid or not. But you're also, if you do the public bid process, you're limited. Generally 12 months, sometimes you can send it to 18. That doesn't work in some of these violence supply time situations. That's where the part B with subpart 2 comes in, which is a negotiated contract, still has to be signed off by the commission and our own. So there's still the checks and balances, but there is a difference.
You think that would put the school board, the school districts in a position to maybe receive higher value for the product that's there to allow the private sale option? Is that the thought process?
The thought process for this bill was first proposed by, at that time, but this wood waste literally being left on the ground. These are some emerging markets as to pellets. So this was just additional ways to sell forest products, and in some sense, additional part. They come back to the tops of the trees, chiefly get left, and some other things like that. But that was the original impetus for the bill. I think it was about 6-7 years ago.
I think it's a good bill. Thank you.
And I think it's clear to remind everybody, we're talking about the waste products here. So if you read it, you've got clear that it's the wood waste, wood fiber, pulpwood, and biomass. We're not talking about taking the trees or 18-inch trees that are on the place and using those. That's going to saw timber as always. So do I hear a motion from anybody? All right, the motion is Thomas Fish and do pass. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, so that will be reported out. Last piece is an exciting bill. We do have a committee sub, and we will have an amendment to that committee sub. So I will go ahead and lodge to start this whole conversation, a motion to well, the motion except committee sub in lieu of the original bill. So that discuss it. So let's go ahead and discuss what we've got here. Okay. We're trying our best to do everything we can to make these markets more competitive, to bring up the pricing for our people that own timber. Statewide, if you own timber, and you've got your 40 acres that you expected to cut when you were 60 years old and get some money off of it to retire on, you might as well keep working because it's not working for you right now. The only way we're going to continue to do that is keep getting people in and getting these mills to come in, these secondary processing facilities, these ethanol plants. The demand drives the price. So you've seen a huge influx of people trying to use efforts to bring those mills in. This bill is not about building the mill itself. It's not about doing the site work. It's about making sure the infrastructure is there and providing a mechanism to help these municipalities, these counties, these economic development districts to get some more money to build that infrastructure in. You know, when you bring a mill in, you're going to have that sewage that's going to be adequate for that, the water supply that's going to be good, and your electricity, because you're drawing in many of those resources. This program was built, right now it's set at 10 million to start with in the title. The likelihood is it's probably going to be more like 5 to work through. The purpose, of course, is to make these sites ready, make them site ready. So regardless of whether you're in Kemper County, you're in Newton County, you're in Scott County, you're in anywhere that you've got this ratio that fits it, that you're able to apply for these funds just for infrastructure. And infrastructure, we're talking about utilities and we're talking about transportation. If you need the rail spur and we can help you get some match money to do that, we're talking about creating that program for that purpose. Now, there's some things you need to know, and there are some criteria. We're not talking about allowing it for everybody, but out there, let me find our line so I can tell you what's our criteria starting there. So you've got your, noting that it's your mills, your secondary processing. We're not talking about more than 75% of the actual application cost of the full build there for whether you're putting water, sewer, or whatever it may be. Line 21 is what I was wanting to tell you about. So in Mississippi, we can cut timber for years and never diminish the supply. Our ratio right now is so high across our state that you can't diminish the supply of timber that's out there. So what we've done in here, we put a growth to drain ratio. And what that means is that, for every tree, there's so many more out there that are just going to continue to be available to be involved with or to be used by these mills. So right now we've got a 1.5 growth to 1 cut drain ratio in there, growth to drain within a 50-mile radius of this location. So that right there, we're not going to see anytime in the next 10, 15, 20 years. Probably not 30 or 40, right, Mr. Forestry? So what we're doing is we're putting a minimum. You've at least got to have 1.5 for every one that you're cutting out there. So you got to hit that first. It's pretty easy to do. Your mills are not going to want to come in there with anything less than that because they want to be sure they have the supply in those 50 miles from you. Your eligible recipients, of course, we're talking about public entities. They've got to have an option in place or some kind of interest agreement in place before they're going to be available to actually apply for this. Like I said, up to 75% of the total. There will be a committee set up, and we're going to have an amendment right here on 31. Is that what we're looking at? The committee is actually going to be the executive director of MDA, the chief economic development officer at MDA, the forest products expert, and then there's been a request to put a designee from the lieutenant governor's office and from the governor's office to make it a 5-member panel that makes the decisions on these. So that will be an amendment here in just a moment on that. You see the eligible applicants, municipalities, county governments, existing forest products facilities, and regional development entities. The goal is to continue expansion and to bring in more plants. Of course, there will be an appropriation that will have to come in behind this. This is just setting up the program. So the development of the MDA will be handling this with Ben. Are there questions on this? I know it's a lot to throw at you. We've been working on this for about 6 months now among different offices, but do you have any questions on this infrastructure grant program?
Just,
Go ahead.
just the concern that, of what I've seen in the past with the growth that's coming about, reforestation contracts, I would like to see that in the process as this moves forward, that we award these grants, that these entities will not restrict the, if I decide to cut my timber, that I do not have to plant it back or reforest.
So, and is that that's a concern you've heard across the state, Senator Seymour?
That is presently in some areas already.
And I have no objection to maybe looking into that further with you, as we continue to move. But, and I think that I've heard some concerns about that, is there are some locations that may be saying that, you know, if you're not going to pledge to replant your timber, then we're not going to allow you to sell to us. We're not going to buy your timber. And you need to investigate that a little further before we look at it in here. So I appreciate you maybe not putting it in here, and let's just look at that further in the future. So, yes, sir, Senator.
First, information if you just indicated if you're not going to replant it,
Some federal deals that are coming into play, because we're in a totally different world now with carbon credits. You're cutting down the timber, or you're going to replant, and your supply. You know, they're of course wanting to be sure that your supply, their supply in those 50 miles from them is going to continue, because these are generational products. We're not, generational. We're not talking about something that's going to go away in 5 years. When they bring in $200 million of investment and put it in your county, of course, they want it to be there for 50 years.
now,
So that's kind of the understanding I've gotten. Senator Seymour, you can clear up that a little bit further if you want to.
It has with the mills, their contracts in present form is with overseas contracts, and some of these companies that they're selling to are making this requirement on.
so again, talking about this generational thing for the next set of next level material to throw, it takes about a generation to grow back. And if I was forest, if I just cut it down, started and not replant it, and so because you're going to need it again the next generation, which is next 20, 40 years. Is that what this is about?
That's fine if it's,
Information to be.
that's fine if it's government property, but if it's your own property, you have the right to sell. And if we're going, as we move forward, doing this with taxpayer dollars, the buying of the timber should be equal for all. Is all I'm trying to make sure.
My curiosity.
And I think we can take this even further, is whenever you do the secondary processing of these chips, say the chips are going to a pellet mill. You know, we're not the huge consumer of pellets here. Generally, pellets are going to go, and the majority of them are going to be shipped overseas, and they're used in a lot of the European markets that they've got over there. So they're looking for that sustainable forest pledge on it. And that's what they're trying to come back through and make sure that they can put that stamp on their products as they send it over. You know, we have a little bit different relationship with them than some others, but I appreciate your line of questioning.
Yeah,
Get that cleared up.
It makes sense to me now.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Any other questions, Senator Brady?
Is there any requirement for minimal job creation? They apply?
We are not putting a minimal job creation in here, as MDA will be involved with this. So before this actually would go forward, you would have MDA or your economic development area that would be involved with. MDA generally does, of course, your site prep. They'll give money for that, and some of the builds, of course, your tax credits. Once they get that in place and they've been approved and got through that process, and they'll be able to apply to this grant program for getting that water and sewer out there to that location.
It looked like for the back of the field, and I've lost my mind for now, that the NBA is going to establish processes and procedures, maybe as they go along, that is for their, part of their internal.
Yes, ma'am.
procedures.
It would be based on our criteria. They would have to do the policies and
I
procedures.
like it. I appreciate your work on it.
Senator Hickman, I saw you get the microphone. What you got?
Yeah, I have just a couple of questions. One, I think you said that there would be a amendment to this.
Yes, sir.
Does that do anything substantial? Because I was just gonna try and kind of ask the.
It's not, it would be line 31, and the amendment's gonna be to add a designee from the lieutenant governor's office and a designee from the governor's office to the board.
Okay, and that's the board who's gonna determine who gets these allocations or.
Yes, sir. There would be an application process that would go to MDA. MDA then would call that board together. The board then would determine whether it meets the criteria. If it did, then they would determine the amount of the award up to 75% of the project.
So just to get my understanding, and I'll be real candid.
Yes, sir.
I don't have at this point the most favorable view of MDA. So the way this process works is it goes to MDA, they adjourn this board. Well, MDA creates the more specific regulation, and this board then determine who are going to be awarded the grants that come through this grant program.
That is correct.
And so I guess one final question, at what process? So who's applying for these, and then at what process? So do we need someone who has committed to having a site here? Or say, for instance, could a county prepare a site to say, hey, we're looking to recruit this industry? At what point do they apply for it?
What we've got in here is you've got to have try to give you the exact language. You've got to have something in place as far as where you can actually start applying. You've got to have either an option in place or an agreement with the facility to come in there. We don't necessarily want to take this program and go out there and make site ready across the state, because we're trying our best to pull that drain down. Otherwise, we're just going to be putting them in place for the Amazons and all these other facilities. So,
and that's good. And I just want to say thank you for your work on this. This will benefit my area greatly. And so my questions are to make sure we fine tune everything so that when we get this out, it can do what we intended for it to do. Thank you. And if anything else come up that I can help with this, I would really like to.
I appreciate that. And I understand your concerns about MDA. I will say this, that MDA just hired, unfortunately, from one of our teaching institutions, Mark Mazells, who's a Morton person, to come in, and he's got a master's doctorate in forestry. And he's been going around to all of your forest MFAs or your county forest associations and giving the talks for years. I think he's gonna be a great asset, and I hope that he can really help us move this along.
I'm excited about him being there. His expertise. So
Yes, sir. Thank you. All right, well then, we have a motion to adopt committee sub in lieu of the original bill. I'm gonna take that one up first. So would you have a vote on that? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, so any opposed? So now we're gonna have an amendment on line 31. Is that the only place, Ms. Allison? Ms. Allison will be adding in and an appointee from the lieutenant governor and an appointee from the governor to that board there. So that would be in that D right there. So she would add in appointee from lieutenant governor, appointee from the governor. Any questions on the amendment? All in favor of the amendment, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, so the amendment's out there. So now I would entertain a motion. Title sufficient do pass sub as amended. Got it? All right, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Last motion.
Right.
All right, thank you all.
Got your call yesterday. I tried to call you back.